Hi, everyone. It is great to be joining you virtually. I am coming today from Wurundjeri country, where I am so incredibly grateful for the Wurundjeri people for looking after this fabulous place that I get to live called Melbourne for so many years. My name is Kimberley Hall. I am in the Google for Education team here in Australia. I am the Learning and Impact Lead, which basically means that I get to do really amazing things with schools and departments of education and Catholic dioceses to look at how we can make sure that all of this technology that we have been investing in and implementing in schools is actually used to drive truly impactful learning opportunities for our young people. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about the future of education because as you have no doubt seen in the many, many headlines that we've had over the last 18 months, we're in a really interesting time in education in Australia. We talk about it as a bit of an inflection point where technology, particularly because of the rise of generative AI, is changing the game. It's changing the rules and it's changing the possibilities in a way that hasn't happened before in my 20 years that I've been in education, and I was a teacher. And I think it's a really exciting time. And there's a whole lot of things that we'll see happen as a result of that. Concurrently, we also have a crisis happening in education in Australia. The predictions currently stand that we will be 4,000 teachers short in Australia by 2025. And if you think about that and the schools across Australia, that's going to have huge, huge repercussions for what education looks like, how we have to reimagine what might be possible with these different new way of working that we're moving towards. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that in our time together today. And hopefully you find that there's something really interesting to share with others around the provocations to help us make education in Australia the best possible experience for our young people. So one of the things that we have done here at the Google for Education team in Australia is take a step back and think about what the purpose of education is. And we're trying to use this purpose of education to make, use as a filter, I guess, for a lot of our decisions that we're making, ways of working, and how we can make sure that the finite resources that we all have, both at Google, but in schools, maximize as much as possible. When we talk about the purpose of education, this is what we're talking about. We want to help learners to develop the knowledge. So we want them to know more stuff, the mindset, the skill set, and the tool set necessary to thrive in this transforming world. And it's really interesting because right now, as I said, the world is truly transforming. We often refer to it as a VUCA environment, so volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. And that really feels like what we're experiencing right now in the education landscape. Now, we want them to be able to thrive in this transforming world so that they can co-construct a flourishing, diverse, and equitable society. And wouldn't this be wonderful if we could make sure that everything that we're doing has this as our filter for our efforts? When we think about this and what does that mean in reality, we actually start to think about breaking down this concept of learning, education, and school. So school for us, we're talking about things like the logistics of school, that our buildings, our timetables, our classes, our people associated with school, so our school leaders and our students and our teachers, and then the things that happen at school, so timetables and lessons and assessments and reports, which is happening in a lot of schools right now and is causing a lot of stress and anxiety for our teaching workforce. When we move up into education, it's interesting, you often hear people refer to their own education as something that happened to them, not something that they were participants in. And when we think about education, we're talking about things like the curriculum, which is most of the time prescribed by an external governing body across Australia, things like exams, which anyone who has a year 12 in their life will know the incredible journey the exams over the last little while have been. And this concept of just in case content. And what we mean by just in case content is content that we teach students just in case one day they need it. And to avoid being too controversial, I won't tell you the things from my education that were probably just in case content, but you can probably all reflect on your time in school and think about things that you might have learned on the chance that you needed it sometime in the future. The other thing we think about when we're talking about education generally is things like our systems, so our departments of education, our Catholic dioceses, our independent bodies, and then the policies and governance that happen and need to overlay into education. And realistically, in my last 20 years of being in education and school haven't really fundamentally shifted or changed. They kind of still look quite similar to what they did when I was a student in a school. But the thing that's changed and the inflection point that we've reached is around learning. And when we talk about learning, and obviously we talk about it through the lens of how technology can support and amplify learning, we think about this idea that technology has the capacity to transform learning. And it has these different variables that it can transform. So time. Without technology, we know that learning happens at particular times, but with technology, we've learned over the last couple of years, we can have synchronous learning, asynchronous learning. People can be learning at a time and point that suits them. Place as well. We traditionally, when we think about education and school, we think about the four walls of a classroom or the buildings and a school grounds, but now learning can take place in lots of different places all around. Space, very similar. People, my schooling looked really kind of like my friends and classmates and my teachers. And that was kind of the people involved in learning. But now with technology, we have this opportunity to bring in experts and to look at how we can actually leverage the, informal learning opportunities through our community in a way that we haven't before. And also the power dynamics in learning are shifting and transforming because of technology. We have self-serve learning content that students are able to access at the point in time in need, which is shifting that dynamic and the way of working in our traditional education and school. I've touched on some of this already as well, but when we're also talking about learning, we love to think about the world as our curriculum with experts everywhere. Bringing in an expert, I remember being a teacher and actually being able to connect my class to the author of a book that we're reading and talk to them about how their perception of some of the things that they wrote was potentially different to the students in my classroom because of context, because of inference and previous experiences and things like that. So bringing those experts into the learning environment. And then just-in-time content. I referred to previously just-in-case content. When we're talking about just-in-time content, it's touching on that self-serve learning content where I am able to access the content and the knowledge that I need at the time, so just in time when I need it. And I'll share one of the, the most successful examples of that we've seen globally as well. And then finally, and I know this is the thing that so many people are talking about right now, technology is really shifting this idea of what learning can look like from a personalized level. So how do we actually make sure that every individual learner is able to access the learning that they need, that's personalized to them, that can be self-paced, anywhere, anytime, and now can be very much supported by things like artificial intelligence. So with all of this context, one of the things that Google has actually produced in the last year is a report into the future of education. And this report, and the address is on the screen, although personally I don't remember the web address for anything like Google everything. It's called The Future of Education paper by Google. And what this report was it was a study with 94 different education experts across 24 countries, and they were trying to address this question in this report. So how will the role of education evolve to meet the needs of the future? This report surfaced 9 key trends that these 94 education experts across those 24 countries consistently surfaced as things that we will see change and shift over the next few years in education, and technology is a driving force behind many of these. You can see on this screen that the findings for the trends were actually divided into self, so the learner, the school, and the system. And what I'm going to do in a little while today is actually just take you through 3 of the things that I think are really, really going to change things, and give you a bit of a practical example of all of those. But if you're interested, the address, as I said, is on the screen. You can feel free to jump into the report and read more at any time. So let's get into one of the trends that I think will have the biggest impact on education, and that's this concept of making learning personal. So for my 20 years in education, we have been talking about this idea of how do we personalize learning, which means that every single student in every single classroom, or not even in a classroom if they're unable to access a formal education institution, is able to get not just the content that they need that's relevant to them and their learning journey and where they are in their growth, but also the support that they need. And the reality is that to really personalize learning, it's been a huge onerous task for teachers. There's been a lot of work involved in them having to do that. And we're at this inflection point where technology actually is potentially able to help us in that way and help teachers in a way to do this so that every learner is getting that truly personalized experience. When we think about it, we're thinking about things like harnessing the AI and adaptive technology to make learning personal and helping students to access information that best works for them. And we have at Google, we're really proud of the fact that we have some really fabulous tools that are really harnessing that AI technology to adapt to that next stage in learning growth for every individual, but also that we really are starting to think consistently about how do we build accessible features into every single product that we release. And we could talk about that for a couple of hours, but we don't have that time today. So I want to share an example of a tool that we have released actually a few years ago, but it's sort of really starting to take off, that I think is a great example of this potential that technology has to truly impact personalized learning. So this tool is called Read Along, and on the screen now you can see some GIFs or GIFs, let's not go into that debate right now, of what this looks like as an app. It's also based on the web, and we've now also been integrating it into Google Classroom, which is a core product within our Google Workspace for Education tools that many, many schools use all across Australia and the world. What Read Along is Read Along is powered by an AI tutor. So it's Dia in the bottom right corner of the GIFs that you can see on your screen. And what Dia does is that she actually listens to young people read, and she gives them real-time personalized feedback. So if they are pronouncing a word correctly, she'll actually give them stars, which you can see in the middle there. And if they're struggling with pronunciation or something like that, she'll actually say, repeat after me, or try doing this word again. Now, the really fabulous thing about this, and I am the mother of a grade 1 student who has been not super in love with the readers that school keeps giving her to try and progress her reading journey. And I will tell you, as a parent and as a teacher, like, there is a limit to my patience of the number of times I can repeat, hey, actually, we pronounce it like this. And I want to be the best mom I can be, but I am human. And the really interesting thing about thinking about how technology can supplement and support me to give my daughter a personalized learning experience with reading is that Dia, as an AI tutor, like, she never runs out of patience. She is always really, really kind and patient and willing to support my daughter at every single step of her learning to read journey. And that's such an interesting shift. And we're going to see so much more of this sort of technology become mainstream. It's actually really exciting. The next trend that I want to talk to you about is one that's really close to my heart, and this is about elevating the teacher. So you might have seen, we've recently embarked in Australia. There's a new advertising campaign about the impact that teachers have, and it's so true, this concept that most of you watching this can probably reflect on your education experience, and there's one teacher that really changed your trajectory in life, probably because of their impact. Now, we have a long way to go in this space to really shift the way that we think about teachers in Australia. But one of the things that we can do while we're going on this journey together to elevate teachers to the level that they should be recognised at is think about how we start to elevate the work that teachers are doing within a classroom or within a school or within a learning context. So how do we take some of the administration or busy work and things that could be supplemented and supported by things like technology away from our teachers to free them up to have the time to do things that only teachers can do really well, like building close relationships and empathy and all of those things that are, innately human qualities. So we've sort of been thinking about how can technology help to save teachers time, so streamline workflows and administration tasks. And I want to give you an example that's a bit of a lateral example outside of education, but I think it's a great one to think about what we could be doing in this space. So Google has this fabulous project called the Digital Future Initiative, and we committed to investing $1 billion into Australia over 5 years to do some phenomenal research and help to move a whole lot of fields forward in this space of, supported by technology. One of the projects happening is a partnership with CSIRO, and this is up in the Great Barrier Reef. And on the screen, what you're actually seeing is images, so vision from the barrier reef. And in the boxes are something called crown of thorns starfish. Some of you might know that crown of thorns starfish are actually some of the biggest predators on the Great Barrier Reef. And traditionally, the way that scientists would deal with this predator is that they would physically drag a scientist behind a boat in scuba gear, and the scientists would be identifying the crown of thorns starfish. They would then surface and say, oh, back there, probably a bit more strategic than the way I'm demonstrating it. Back there, over there, there is crown of thorns, and someone else would go in and remove it. And as part of this Digital Future Initiative, we've actually partnered with CSIRO, and we're now using Google's AI vision technology to pinpoint with incredible accuracy where crown of thorns starfish are actually located, and that's what you're seeing in the vision here. And what this actually enables us to do is elevate the role of the scientist. So rather than the scientist having to be dragged behind a boat to try and find the crown of thorns starfish, that's something that technology can do incredibly well with incredible accuracy. So what we're doing is we're freeing up that scientist's time to do the thing that a scientist can only do. So go back in and delicately and perfectly remove that crown of thorns starfish, so preserving our reef. And if we think about how do we create that, where we free up our teachers in our schools from doing the things that technology can actually support them with, so that they can focus on using their very limited resources and time on the things that only they can do incredibly well. And if we can elevate the teachers like that, we will really see some change happen in learning. The final trend that I want to talk to you about today is this concept of shifting to a lifelong learning mindset. And this is something that you've probably heard talked about over the years, where we really want all of our learners and our teachers to be lifelong learners. So learning, like I talked about at the start, is changing and shifting just in time, world as a curriculum. So we don't need to confine learning to a point in time in need. It should be accessible. It should be acceptable to access it anywhere and anytime, and it will constantly look different. Now, one of the most interesting things that we've seen happen, and this is, the research I'm actually going to show you is quite old. There is updated version. I should have probably found that before this presentation, but haven't. So, but around YouTube. And if you think about YouTube as a self-serve learning repository where anyone can go who has this lifelong learning mindset, where they know they can always find something new to learn to progress their own learning, it's a pretty phenomenal resource. And so this stat is actually back from 2018, which is, temporally not that long, but feels like, especially for Melburnians in lockdown, about a lifetime ago. And you can see even back in 2018, it was 51% of people who were visiting YouTube were going there to learn something that they had not learned before. So this incredible lifelong learning mindset of, hey, I want to know about this. I'm going to go out and find it. The other thing that we're seeing really change in this space is this concept of micro-credentials. So there are lots of different versions of this sort of thing online. Google has a phenomenal resource called Grow with Google, which is all about providing offering courses online so people can upskill themselves and get a credential from anywhere, anytime, and on the things that they're interested in. And this is shifting that lifelong learning mindset. So how do we ensure that people have access to these sorts of resources so that they can continue to learn and grow throughout their entire life? So that's Future of Education in under 20 minutes. We probably could talk about this for about 20 hours, but we wanted to give you a bit of a taste of how we're thinking about the future of education and how we really genuinely believe that technology is going to be able to play a really important role in helping to amplify, accelerate, and celebrate great learning in a really personalized way over the next few years. So thanks very much for joining me. I hope you enjoy the rest of the summit. It was a pleasure being with you, and take care.